Jesus Christ reveals through Gottfried Mayerhofer, Secrets of Life. Chapter 7, July 29th, 1870. The 4 periods of creation of worlds and earths. Since all that I do always happens in accordance with one and the same fundamental principle, as a creational act is destined to produce something expedient, and according to these fundamental principles has to develop everything in successive stages, perfect it and lead it back to me, there exists also in this respect the most intimate connection between the earlier 2 sections and this one, where I shall again show you what first in 4 periods of human life was demonstrated and then repeated in the 4 seasons, or the developmental and maturing epochs. Here this was achieved only on a larger scale and in the course of eons upon eons of time, before the aforementioned stages could become effective. I began with the other sections because they, being more closely connected with you, could be better grasped by you, so that you might then more easily enter into this 3rd problem and thus manage it better. As you have seen in childhood how the spiritual mental life one day develops into great things, and how in winter, under the blanket of snow, all that lives and vegetates waits for its deliverance. Thus also in the endlessness of space, everything was once intermingled, mixed and in a dormant state, waiting for my mighty word to waken it from its sleep into activity. It was my ideas and thoughts of creation, which, proceeding from the simplest, endowed everything, however simple, with a reproductive capacity, which gave the first impetus to the infinite ether mass, where up until then everything had been dwelling together in peace, without a desire to attract or repel one another. And when my will added the first impulse for it, there began the coming into being, the joining of like and like, and the repelling of the dissimilar. The individual elements, driven by spiritual forces, separated or combined according to a certain order corresponding to my laws. There began life, the taking on of forms. What hitherto still dissolved, unlimited by width, length and depth, had respawned in the ether began to take on form, to structure itself. Also here there began the corresponding process of childhood, or the conflict of the elements under the blanket of snow, as soon as the first ray of spiritual urge awakened the child's soul, or the first ray of the life-giving and warming sun burst asunder the icy cold shell of the snow, underneath which millions of shackled lives were hoping for their redemption. The great spring of the cosmic coming into existence began, and the worlds, shell globes and suns entered the age where not everything is separated, but where through fermenting processes unruly parts are eliminated from the main or central sun, and again through the same process become smaller suns, which, after a long process of dividing and severing still smaller single parts, became earths, circling them like children. Metaphorically speaking, the cosmic suns in their immense magnitude had to go through the whole phase of youth. They had to proceed on their road of development, not peacefully, but through violent disturbances, living through revolutions in their interior and on their surface, which always changed both. Just as in the case of the youth, the mighty passions in his youthful nature leave spiritual traces in his inner nature, and physical traces in his outer appearance. Thus the conflict continued, with the destruction of many a thing that had come into existence, and its renewal on a higher level. Everything pressing ahead until, finally, the equilibrium between the interior and the exterior was restored. The great and smaller suns and their earths entered their age of manhood, where their life proceeded in an orderly fashion, and the violent revolutions and destruction gradually had to make room for a lawful order. And from there, always carrying the urge for perfection within, all the spiritual, bound through matter, gradually in the worlds and suns, changed the form and outer coverings of the same. Thus, through millions of gradations, leading it towards its spiritually higher destination. This way also the worlds, suns and earths will after eons of time again enter old age, when most of the vitality will be spent and transformed into spiritual elements, and matter will be changed similarly as with the tree, where only its skeleton, without leaves and fruits, and with man, the worn-out body, can no longer serve his advanced soul as a dwelling and tool, since the rigid material is only an obstacle to the purified spiritual. This is how matters stand with the worlds, suns and earths. Once they have accelerated their activity to such an extent that in their outer covering everything is used up, and only the great and mighty urge in the interior is left, which forces to even more progress. Also this inner spirit conglomerate of the great worlds, like the human soul, will burst the now useless shell which hitherto had served it as envelopment and organ of activity, and from it a higher world, solar and earth system will be founded, spiritualized and perfected. In comparison, the present creation will be to the future one like slag compared to iron, which the former has eliminated since it is no longer of any use as far as iron and its utilization are concerned. There are the great creational epochs as they have been occurring from eternity in infinite space, and what, true to their destiny, they will achieve after eons of time, for the duration of which you have no number, and are incapable of imagining a length of time during which my will is to fulfill itself. The present material creation is followed by a spiritual one, just as the earthly human life is followed by a spiritual one, where also the products and living beings after such a change will have an existence corresponding to a world built on a higher level. Now I will show you another, still higher spiritual gamut than the preceding ones. This gamut of the spiritual and most sublime up to myself is called Spirit, Soul, Angelic, and Divine Life. More on this in the next chapter.